to, where are we? Silmarillion Film Project. That's where we are. So we're getting ready to get going here. We've got a crew with us here tonight. Oh, and I forgot to ask, did you, Nick and Marie, did you guys want to do webcam or audio only?
I mean, I can.
It's up to you. I can change.
I made my hair less crazy just in case, so you know, we're good.
I can turn on my webcam if you want me to.
Either way, I'm not. I gotta. I'll change my.
Oh wow, that's not quite fully less crazy at the headphones.
All right, let's see. Gotta reorganize my windows here. Okay.
Whatever.
All right. Okay, Dave.
We're all doing it.
There we go.
Everybody's doing it.
Right.
All right. Okay. I think I'm gonna try to figure out how to organize my screen here. I'm just gonna overlap them like this. There we go. Oh, that's right. Dave, you were blocked by the Signum logo on the Twitch stream. Fix that. Okay. There we go. All right. Look at this crew here tonight. Fantastic. Okay. Very good. I think I am ready to start. Okay. Ready to go, Dave.
Everybody else ready? Okay, here we go. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Pausing for the convenience of the editors. Hello and welcome to this special Christmas edition of the Silmarillion Film Project. I'm your co-host, Dave Kale, coming to you from a place that doesn't feel much like Christmas, other than all the Christmas lights in front of the houses, but otherwise it's about 60 to 70 degree weather. But I am excited to nonetheless be bringing you this holiday special edition of is this going to be our last one of 2020?
It is, yeah. This will be the last one of the calendar year, yeah.
So, wow, another year in the bag for
That's
the
right.
Silmarillion Film Project, a
That's
podcast
right.
that never ends. And I am joined, as always, by Professor Corey Olson, the Tolkien professor. And by tonight, we've got 4 people on the line,
Yeah.
and we're all on. This could be a watershed moment. Everyone's
right.
on.
That's right.
But we've got our head writers, Nick Palazzo and Marie Prosser. How are y'all tonight?
Good, thanks.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Good. Glad. Well,
I'm super excited about this episode. We've got a very exciting episode tonight. I need to steal your line, Dave.
That's right.
great. No, that's fine. Please do. Corey and I are very excited to start complaining about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've got a whole set of complaints all queued up, so we're going to be great. Yeah, it's episode 2 tonight, going through the outline of episode 2. After having finished episode 1 and then done some other stuff last time. I was going to add something, and I've already forgotten what I was going to say. So never mind. Oh, that's right. I remember. I was going to say, Dave, here I am in quite the different meteorological situation where it's like 15 degrees and there's a foot of fresh snow outside. So I'm very Yuletide festive up here in New England today.
That sounds lovely.
Just thankful not to be out of power. So first snowstorm in which I didn't lose power this year. So there we go so far.
Wow, it really is a special night.
It is a super special night. But anyway, yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. This is going to be great as we continue to go through our outlines for our episodes. So you may remember that episode 1 we did the primary plot was the arrival of the men into Beleriand and the meeting between Finrod and Beor and the rest of his people, their decision to go to Nargothrond, and then the C plot, B plot was was Aredhel in Gondolin and the beginning of her unrest and desire to leave Gondolin. Anyway, so that's where we were for episode 1, and now we're moving into episode 2, where Aredhel takes center stage here in episode 2. So that's going to be really interesting to see. A few announcements before we begin. Lots of things going on here at the end of the year for Signum. First thing I would want just to remind people of, as we come to the end of the tax year, if you're thinking about making deductible related donations, I just invite you to remember Signum University, as we are a fully tax-exempt institution, and you would be welcome to get your $300 tax deduction that everybody gets on top of their standardized deduction by donating to SIG. Just a suggestion, if you should feel so inclined to remember Signum during this tax time. The second announcement is that we have coming up here through December 24th, we're still running our special on our anytime audits, a really fun gift to give folks, normally a $95 tuition to get access to the full set of lectures and class materials from any one of our Signum courses, and that is on sale for $75 until December 24th. You can get a gift certificate to give that to someone else. They can choose any course from our catalog that they want. So it's a really fun gift. We do have our Signum clubs coming up. The Signum Academy clubs are our newest program. This is an extracurricular program for students from 3rd grade up through high school. We're doing online book club, creative writing club, conversation club, foreign language conversation club, and translation club, where kids can learn to read Anglo-Saxon, which is kind of awesome, I think you have to admit. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So all 4 of those clubs we're going to be beginning running those in January. It's an ongoing monthly subscription to join. So you can go to our webpage, signumuniversity.org, and find your way to the clubs page from there to register. We also have an event coming, 2 events coming up soon, both on Sunday. One, Fireside Poetry for the winter solstice, happening at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on December 20th. Our festive holiday gathering that we always do, poetry reading on Sunday evening. And then after that will be the script discussion. If you want to get in earlier on in the process, of course, here in this episode today, we're going to be talking about the outline of episode 2 is a more or less finished product. If you would like to be involved in the earlier stages of these discussions, to be working out and voicing ideas and suggestions for how you think some of these episodes could go, then feel free to join Nick and Marie and Rhiannon at the discussion there. You can find it on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/signumu. And that's at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday the 20th. So that is all the stuff that's coming up and going on now. Episode 2, The Wide World. So, Aredhel. Now, so Nick, I'm pausing here because I'm debating whether or not we probably really should start by talking about Aredhel, even though I know you're really keen to talk about the Beor stuff, but we really should. Aredhel's the A plot, so we should really give Aredhel, the central focus here. Okay. Aredhel leaves Gondolin. So our year is 355. So remind me, what was the year of episode 1? How long's it been?
It's been 15 years.
15 years.
So it was 340 in the last episode. It's 355 now.
Okay, so 15 years have passed. That's not going to be especially noticeable in Gondolin, apart from the fact that her preliminary misgivings and everything have now blossomed into firm decisions and actions, right? But if we were only doing the Gondolin plot, it wouldn't be at all obvious that much time had passed, which seems perfectly appropriate because from their point of view, it really hasn't, right? But in multiple ways, right? Both because 15 years is not so long to the elves, and because it's Gondolin, right? I mean, again, it's like the time bubble that, you know, Lothlorien wishes it could be when it grows up. So yeah, absolutely. But obviously, as is so generally the case in season 5, where the time change is going to become super obvious is in Nargothrond with Beor and the rest of them, and especially with Beor, who is now significantly elderly compared to episode number 1. Okay. So I will go through. Let me just summarize here what's on the slides to give the sort of the overall outline of the thing, and then we can kind of go through some of these things point by point. So we have Aredhel leaving Gondolin, and under the auspices of being an official messenger to Fingolfin, right? This is a diplomatic envoy, not just she gets permission to leave because she's my sister thing. So that is explicit. But she travels instead south towards Doriath, and is turned back at the forest of Brethil, after which there is an attack, and the attack is put on by Tevildo and his feline troops. This is by way of giving Tevildo one last whirl before we kill him off later on in the season. Is this kind of his last moment in the spotlight?
His last win.
Last hurrah.
Yeah,
His
the last hurrah.
win.
Yeah.
I like his last win.
Yeah.
He's got to get something.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. I guess, you know, getting killed later on will be time in the spotlight, just probably less entertaining for him. Okay, and then after the attack, then we've got Aredhel traveling through Dungorthep alone, going to find the sons of Feanor, arriving at the fortress of Celegorm and Curufin in the Pass of Aglon, and they're not there. But she meets dwarves on the road, dwarves who are traveling to Doriath. She joins them, and then she learns about Eol from the dwarves who know of him, and she enters Nun Elmoth on purpose to meet Eol there at the end of the episode. Okay, so that's the outline that you got now. So one thing that I feel that we have to sort of acknowledge from the beginning, this is a fairly significant deviation from the text, right? We've now, some of that is very sort of clear, as I think anyway, based on all the discussions that we've had. It's pretty clear the thinking behind some of that, at least, right? That in particular, we wanted to ensure that Aredhel didn't sound merely fickle and sort of childish, right? So we don't want her just being like, I'm so bored in Gondolin, nor do we necessarily want like, well, I'm not going to go see Fingolfin, I'm going to go see my friends, right? I mean, it's so the choice to not have her, you know, because in a sense we've kind of railroaded her even more into going to Fingolfin, right? She needs like a good reason not to go to Fingolfin because she's been sent on an official diplomatic mission, and it's even in line, in theory, right, with what she says she wants, right, with her sense of mission. I mean, going to Fingolfin seems like a really good idea from everybody's perspective now, not just a, you know, your big brother is trying to keep an eye on you and pass you off to dad kind of situation like it seems to be in the text. So the rationale to go, and so the first interesting choice, right, the first departure that you guys did here was you still have her not going to Fingolfin like she's supposed to, but instead of having her go straight to the Sons of Feanor, you have her heading south towards Doriath. So tell me about the decision there.
We wanted to give her a destination that was not necessarily immediately the Sons of Feanor. And Galadriel had been living in Doriath for a good long time. Right. And the thought was that Aredhel might want to also revisit Galadriel, who had some ideas about Beleriand and everything that would be different from the rest of the Noldor. So seeking out Galadriel wouldn't necessarily seem like a departure from her stated goals. And she's totally going to get to visit Fingolfin eventually.
Right.
Like, she's not doing what she's supposed to do.
Right. So her idea is basically, I'm going to Fingolfin. I'm just not going to go straight to Fingolfin, right? First, I'm going to gather information before I go. And since I'm right here and Doriath is right there, I might as well pop in, visit, my cousin, take the temperature of things in Doriath.
Right,
and
see what has changed in Doriath since Gondolin was founded.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that makes sense. I mean, especially given the geographical distances, right? I mean, that when she comes out of Gondolin, she is right across the street from Doriath, right? So it does make us. It's not like it's not like she's saying I'm going to pop down to Nargothrond first and then go back up, right? She's not going that far out of her way. She's just going to collect information. It's funny, though. I mean, it does create a comical sort of situation, right? I'm going to go to Doriath, behind the girdle of Melian, because that's less isolated than where I've been, right? Because compared to me, they're right on top of current events in Doriath, right? And that's kind of funny, but I like it. Okay, so I can see the rationale. So that's her reason. What was your reason for wanting her to do that instead of heading to the Sons of Feanor?
Well, one thing is and Rhiannon points this out, is that the visit to Doriath actually is part of the text of the Silmarillion. So
right.
She does actually go there. So trying to kind of preserve some of the pieces of the trip. Also, they have to know at this point that Nen Dungartheb is not a great place to go.
Right.
And
right.
So it's reasonable for them to at least think, hey, at the very least, we should try to travel through Doriath, because that's way safer than going through Nen Dungartheb.
Yeah. And
less visible than, less high profile than traveling all the way around up across the top of Dorthonion in
right.
full view of Angoradrim.
Right.
Not that, I mean, distance is a thing, but
yeah,
they tend to make choices to not travel too much in that direction.
Sure. But I can imagine, given sort of how proactive we've been making Aredhel, and thinking even of her farewell tour that we gave her in season 4 before she entered Gondolin, I can see, the Aredhel character that we were envisioning basically wanting to say, I want to make the rounds, right? I mean, I could see her saying, I'm going to go to Doriath, through Doriath, come out, talk to the Sons of Feanor, loop up, talk to Angrod and Aignor, and then head over to Fingolfin when I know everything, right? When I've been briefed by everybody and we're ready to have a real council, and I can give him, I can brief him on everything, including Gondolin, and we can make a real plan.
She knows where Fingolfin is.
Right.
She isn't, and he's not going anywhere. So
right.
She already knows what Fingolfin's stance is on the situation. So getting more information is certainly a good strategy for her. You'll notice one thing that I really like. Was one of my main concerns for this episode, for Aredhel's plot, is that there's 3 episodes worth of stuff that happens to her
right
in this episode.
Right.
It would be very easy to stop her story in this episode at the point where she escapes from the cats, and then do another episode when she's in Nen Dungartheb, and then another episode when she gets into Nen Elmoth, right?
Yeah. I was noticing that when I got to that point in the outline about right after the fight with the cats, it almost felt like the end of an episode. Right, it almost felt like, I mean, it felt like a point where, a point where we have kind of ended episodes before. It felt a little familiar that way.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Now, here's Stephen H has a really good question. How aware is Fingolfin that there are supposed to be envoys, and what is his reaction when he realizes they've been waylaid? I don't think he knows anything. Right.
I was actually just typing that.
Okay, right. Because the Eagles don't do messenger service, right? I mean, they're just, they inform, they keep an eye on stuff and may inform Turgon about what's going on in the outside world, perhaps what they see, but they're not running messages for Turgon, right?
Hmm. Right.
Correct. There's been no communication from Gondolin to the rest of Valerian since the founding of Gondolin.
Okay, so nobody's going to know except Turgon, who, or rather the elves of Gondolin. So, okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Right. So what we had to do in order to get Aredhel from leaving Gondolin to meeting Ale by the end of the episode, we had to be very, very judicious with what we spent our time on. We had to be very, very careful. We couldn't spend, and a lot of the decisions that are made here are made specifically to get as much done as possible in as little time. Right.
Yes. Yeah. Stephen is saying, well, so Fingolfin will be unaware that Aredhel has died later on.
Yeah. Who's going to tell him?
Yeah, I think so.
She dies in Gondolin.
Yeah. No, right. No, because she's going to die in Gondolin. So, yeah, sure. It wouldn't be... Yeah. No, he would first find out in Mandos. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Oh, hi.
Right. Yes. One of those times when you're not happy for your daughter to be there before you to welcome you there. Yes. Exactly.
I mean, she'll get better.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yep. No, that does seem necessary. And I mean, I would have to think that that's true in the text as well. I mean, there's no reason to think that any news goes out of Gondolin. So yeah, I mean, I have to think that in Tolkien's version of the story, that's also true, that they might encounter in Mandos. I mean, okay, no, we know they don't really encounter each other very much in Mandos. It's not exactly a social hangout spot. That's not kind of not the point of Mandos. But anyway, whatever. Okay, so let's not go there.
You mean people don't have like after death tours?
No, not
Mandos?
So much. Yeah, no. There's not like happy hour in Mandos. They just don't do that there. Yeah, it's I mean, you can complain to management, but that's apparently how it's run. So, it's all about solemn instruction there. Okay, but anyway.
It does raise a good question about what exactly people do there.
They learn their lessons unless they're Fëanor, basically. It's kind of...
I mean, until all creation ends is a long time.
Yeah.
But some people have lots of lessons to learn.
Is he just spending his time delivering futile speeches?
Probably.
I have to imagine he is very alone and very on fire.
Right. Very alone and very on fire. That seems to work.
And not in the good way.
Right. Yeah. Rhiannon says we need a spin-off show about the halls of Mandos. Most boring show ever. The show in which characters never interact with one another. No, I mean, it would be, it's basically Elvish Purgatory. It's Elvish Purgatory is what Mandos is, essentially. They're learning their lesson in their own way.
That one's for sure a single cam half-hour workplace comedy.
Yeah.
It's like The Good Place.
Yes.
Exactly like that. Rhiannon says Fëanor has to write, "I will not burn boats on a chalkboard hundreds of times. I will not kill my..."
Yeah.
Except
the trick is he has to do it in Daeron's runes, and that's why it never gets done, because he refuses.
Oh.
But anyway, but back to speaking about being judicious about what we talk about. Okay, so in the episode, right, as you said, every scene with Aredhel has to be, has to have a particular storytelling purpose, right? And even
Right.
a sort of a character development purpose, so that
Right.
because we've got a lot of things going on. So like the cat, we don't spend much time on the cat attack. Like we sort of establish the fact that Tevildo attacks, and we get like a corpse, but we don't get like much in the way of like fight scene or anything.
Right. It's meant to have some level of excitement, but the point of the scene is not an extended, drawn-out fight scene. It's that Aredhel feels some level of responsibility for having been the leader of this group of people. Said, we're going to go here and we're going to do this, and they all got attacked by cats. So that's like her first inclination, or then that this whole mission is maybe not going to go well.
Right. And this leads to our second departure from the text. Everyone dies. Right?
Yes. That is the departure that is in the text. Yes.
So we don't want survivors returning to Gondolin to tell tales.
So,
okay.
This was the subject of much discussion.
I was guessing.
And so I went into this with very little in the way of strong feelings in either direction of this. And when I saw that there was like conflict brewing around this issue, I was starting to be prepared to say, okay, let's table this discussion so we don't spend all night on it, and we'll hash it out on the message boards. But the more that it got talked about, and Florian was very much in the favor of the everybody dies camp.
Mm-hmm.
And he made such a fantastically good case that eventually I was like, you know what? You're right. And so so here's the thing.
All right.
Extra Silmarillion texts do state that the Guardians are Glorfindel and Icthelion and whatnot. And the Silmarillion itself says that they are lords of Turgon's household. Now, of course, that doesn't tell you much because, like, technically all of these characters are lords of their own houses in their own right. And so, like, lords of his household would essentially mean, like, his bodyguards that are not these people.
Right.
But the problem is that we don't have a lot of time to show these people who have survived. We don't have time to tell their story.
Right.
And if we don't tell their story, then they look kind of incompetent. Like...
That was my fear about Glorfindel and Icthelion from the beginning. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They had one job, right? Protect
Right.
Aredhel. They fail, and they give up. Right?
Right. And even if it's just nameless soldiers, like, we're not really gaining that much, and we're showing people who have just decided Aredhel's dead and why. Does Tevildo tell them? Does do they find any evidence? Do we have time to show them finding this evidence?
Right. Yeah, we
The
don't.
open question of why does Aredhel not go back to help the people that she's separated from, and why do they not help her, is in the book described as they lose each other and they can't find each other. But that implies we'd have to spend time showing some level of searching.
Right.
On both sides.
And reasons for giving up searching. Yes. Yes, I agree. I mean, you're right. I hadn't thought about this much either, but this actually strikes me as a really interesting example of one of those kinds of things. We've talked about this on many other occasions, of course, in the context of film, but there are a lot of, not just, characterizations or whatever, but there are a lot of story elements that work really well when they happen in one sentence in a, broad view historical summary, right? Like this, then, they lost each other and couldn't find one another, and she went on alone and they returned to Gondolin. Like, you can say that and it's fine. But when we come down closer to the characters, when we come down close to the narrative and we're beginning to think through things that level of narrative, that kind of story does not really think about, right? It doesn't really ask you to think about. Yeah, you're right. Like, we have to, it begins to feel very different. Somebody screwed up pretty badly if it happens the way that it happens in the published Silmarillion.
Well, if like I said, if we had 3 separate episodes to tell this story,
right,
or if this was the only story we were telling in this episode, like if the entire story was focused on Aredhel's journey,
mm-hmm.
I believe we could make it work, because the B plot would be other people searching for Aredhel. We would see her searching for them, and them not finding each other is a natural progression of the story.
Right.
That gets us to where we need to be. Actually, it's funny. Marie and I were talking about this some time ago. So, Marie and I talk a lot about the show Supernatural, because my wife loves it and Marie loves it, and I don't. So,
lots to talk about.
There's a scene in it where there are 2 characters, and they get ambushed. One of them gets knocked out, and when he wakes up, his friend is gone, and the people who ambushed them are gone. And so he's wandering through the woods alone. He gets to the place where they were supposed to meet, and is expecting to wait for his friend until the very last second.
Right. And
his friend's already there. And not only is his friend already there, but he has fought off the people who captured him and gained the objective that they came here to do together all by himself. And he's telling the story, and I'm immediately thinking, oh, this is a shapeshifter. This is actually the bad guy in disguise. Because I don't buy any of that. And then he says this detail that only the real character could have known. I'm like, what? Like, that was, you were clearly setting this up. What is this? And that's my concern, is because when you tell the audience about action after the fact, and you tell them things, and you show characters saying things that the audience knows isn't true, they look like they've either been bamboozled or that they're lying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so just having them show up after the fact, like, yes, they can tell Turgon what happened, but why do we believe that story when we already know that that's not what happened?
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the problem I have, if folks survive, I mean, the problem that I have with trying to depict the text from the narrative, somebody's got to give up too soon, or both have to give up too soon. I mean, sure, you can say that Aredhel gets lost in Nan Dun Gortheb, but why does she go there? Right? They're not in Nan Dun Gortheb when they get ambushed, right? So she's got to pack up and go to Nan Dun Gortheb, which is not in the I mean, okay, maybe we could say, like, well, she's like, maybe they survived but got into Nan Dun Gortheb, in which case, why does she think that? Like, are there signs that would lead her? Is she just that bad of a tracker that she can't tell that no one, in fact, has gone in that direction? Is she just guessing that they've gone into Nan Dun Gortheb, in which case she's wrong and looks a little clueless? So why does she give up and go away? And why do they give up and go home and assume that she's dead? Do they have strong reasons to believe that? I mean, I think about Beleg, right? The persistence of Beleg in pursuing Turin, right? And I'm like, why does the escort of Aredhel not show a fraction of Beleg's dedication to the job, right? I mean, think how far Beleg goes, right? Finding Turin, chasing down Turin after he's captured and then coming and when he goes back the second time to find Turin and the outlaws. I mean, like, seriously, they couldn't stick around for. I mean, okay, so she had gone into Nan Dun Gortheb. Why didn't they follow her into Nan Dun Gortheb? She might need help, right? If they had any suspicion that she'd gone there. So I mean, it does strike me as one of those things that is really hard to depict in exactly the way. Again, it comes off easily enough in, as
Mhm.
one sentence in a paragraph, in that kind of really broad historical mode that the Silmarillion is speaking in. But when you actually zoom down into it and try to enter the psychology of the characters in question, it gets a lot harder. I hadn't really thought about that with this instance.
I hadn't either until we were talking about it. Like I said,
Everybody dying certainly makes it easier. If she knows for a fact everybody's dead, then all she can do is go on. And now when she goes on, she's neither irresponsible nor clueless. Now she's brave. Now she's intrepid, right? I shall not be deterred even by the fact that my entire bodyguard is dead. In fact, I feel a greater responsibility to go on, so that their sacrifice not be for nothing, and the mission still succeed and all that kind of thing. I mean, it's all kinds of understandable and even admirable at that point.
One of Florian's concerns in plotting this entire episode was to not treat Aredhel as a damsel in distress.
Mm-hmm.
Because so much of the story could easily go in that direction.
Yes.
She can be Snow White lost in the woods and like tripping over her own shoes if we wrote her that way. Like that would fit.
Absolutely. It would fit the story. It absolutely would.
Yeah.
I mean,
and he's like, he kept insisting, she's a huntress. She's good at fighting. She's competent. Like we can't have her doing things that look
like a Disney princess.
I'm so helpless.
Yes.
Like he was very adamant that we not portray her that way. And this was one of the instances, but not the only instance where he was really arguing strongly for avoiding that.
No, I agree with that principle, certainly. And I mean, it's a choice that we made about Aredhel from the beginning, right? I mean, in the text, she is an active character. She does make decisions. She does do things. But at the same time, she's also an object, right? She's tired of being cooped up with her brother. And so, but then she goes, and the first thing that happens is that she gets cooped up by somebody else, right? She just goes from captivity to captivity. She goes from passivity to passivity. She's active to connect in between. But I agree with you. The, damsel in distress stumbling through the forest. I'm not saying that that's what Tolkien had in mind when he described it, but it as you say, it would fit. It would fit the text, and I agree with that. So I agree. This, having her be the only survivor is definitely a better way of accomplishing that. Because
now the question came up of how, and I think Steve asked this as well, of how Turgon finds out.
That's, of course, the obvious question, and the first thing that I was thinking of when we were when I was reading this, because obviously it makes a big difference, right? I mean, Turgon. I feel like Turgon has to. If he doesn't find out, now it's possible that he could just not know and be wondering for a long time, for years, what happened until she returns.
Right. But that's not as strong because, like, why doesn't he check into this? Like, why doesn't he investigate this any further if he thinks that she could be alive?
Yeah.
And, and so what I had thought of is that if she sees one of the party members dead, she could, I believe Rhiannon gave her this cloak made out of the skin of a giant cat.
Nice.
That this white ruffed cloak and if she takes that off and lays it down on the body of one of her dead party members, and it soaks up his blood, and then she gets kind of backed off into Nandungartheb. She knows everybody's dead, so she's got no reason to try to fight the cats at this point. And one of them grabs the bloody cloak as a trophy, and then at the very end of the episode, in like the tag of it, one of the eagles lands in Gondolin with the dead cat who still has the bloody cloak, right? And Turgon is able to divine everything that he needs to know from
he
that.
recognizes her cloak.
The eagles
and thinks her dead.
haven't seen her, so they have no reason to think. The eagles themselves have no reason to think that she's still alive. Right. After that,
she's in Non Elmoth by then, and the eagles won't be able to find her there.
Right.
Yeah. No, and it certainly makes sense that Turgon would ask, would ask the eagles to be on the lookout for her after some time had passed. Makes all kinds of sense, right? That seems like a thing that he would do. They find the evidence of the fight. because some time will have passed because she will have gone down. It's not like the next day or something after she leaves. So, and the Eagles wouldn't find her body, but they find her cloak, and so that works. That works as a way. The other thing, it has a massive impact on how she's received when she gets back to Gondolin, right? Is a huge difference between, we thought you were dead and now you were alive. Wow, that's amazing. This is wonderful. And, dude, where have you been? Why have you not reported back? We sent you off to Fingolfin, and what the heck, right? Is kind of the response you'd get if he had heard nothing at all. I was expecting that you're supposed to come back. You were supposed to report in.
Do we need a little bit more than the cloak to really communicate? Like what do they think happened to her?
Well, what I would say is that they would think that she was eaten by a giant cat.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Like, is that kind of that were there? Because they don't find her body or even like a significant body part.
Right.
They find her cloak and a lot of blood.
Yeah.
So,
in the jaws of a giant cat.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right. Either escaped or ran off, was carried off, or was like completely obliterated.
Right. And she's going to be off the grid almost entirely. Eagles would not have an easy time finding her, obviously, in Nan Elmoth. And not even in Nan Dungorthab. Like, we have a bunch of windows where she's going to be not readily findable by Eagle, right? So I'm wondering, we don't necessarily have to do the cloak thing. If they just find find bodies, evidence, it doesn't have to be definite. Like, they don't have to come back with proof necessarily. They just have to tell Turgon what they saw, that, they saw a place where there was a fight. They found at least, a few bodies and feared that, and it looked like, there were more, and it looked, I don't know. The thing about the physical object, about the cloak, is it makes it possible to do non-verbally, right? So we can just do it as a tag instead of a whole scene.
Right. Then scenes we don't have a lot of
time for, right?
Space for.
Right.
And the cloak was a signature item of Aredhel's, so giving it some meaning in the story allows it to stand in for her for a death scene. So it would convey to the audience pretty directly that the cloak equals Aredhel, because she's been wearing it pretty consistently for the last few episodes.
Yeah. But like I said, that what I like about there not being a survivor is, again, why did the survivor go back? Why didn't the survivor go try to find Aredhel and help her? That's a question that we would have to answer. And I don't see, again, that's where we come back to either cluelessness or whatever. They're going to look either incompetent or foolish,
because if Turgon would have questions about whether or not Aredhel's dead and he's removed by a couple hundred miles.
Yes.
How much more would a person on the ground right there who just saw her a little while ago?
Yeah.
How much more would they have questions?
Exactly.
I see her body. Why on earth would I think she's alive?
I'm trying to imagine this scene, right? Like, survivor finds her bloody cloak or whatever, right? And they're like, oh, this is Aredhel's cloak. It looks like she was injured or something. But her body is not here. Like, I see no body of hers, right? There's bodies of other people, but I don't see her body. So I'm going to assume she's dead, right? And then Turgon's like, so she's dead? And he's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure she's dead. How are you sure? I found her cloak, but you didn't see her body. No. Like, what makes you think she's dead? Because I don't know. It's just,
Yeah. No survivor. I think no survivors makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. The deal was we would need some information to get passed along. So either the cats would have to claim to have killed Aredhel, or someone would have had to have thought they found evidence that she had died, but it wasn't her body because she didn't die. And then that information gets passed along. But the main problem is that the audience knows that Aredhel is alive immediately after all this, because we're going to follow her through Nan Dungorthab in a couple minutes. So
And there's
regardless
reason
of
for
what,
her to move on because everybody
Right.
else is dead.
Right. So if we try to convince the audience that her companions who survived the attack did their best job to find her and do everything, but they don't find her and they think she's dead, then they failed. And whatever we're trying to tell there isn't going to work because the audience knows she's alive. And once the audience knows she's alive, Turgon's going to look dumb for thinking she's dead, or silly for trusting the word of who's telling him she's dead when they're wrong. If an eagle just says, hey, here's this bloody cloak, it's your sister's, or doesn't say anything at all, just hands it over,
Right.
then he can have a moment of grief.
But he's
And
in
we'll believe
suspense.
his
Suspense and doubt
Right.
and fear for years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we can empathize with his grief without thinking, Turgon, you idiot, go check it out. There's no dead body.
Right. She's
Right.
right there. Yeah. Whereas again,
Right.
everything is simpler and cleaner from both directions. And because, as you said, like, we need to show them giving up. But again, they had one job. They have one job, which is to stay with her. Why would they turn back? Like, it's just what they would have. They would only turn back if they knew that she was dead. I mean, they've got to at least be willing to follow her for, I don't know, a quarter the time of and distance that Beleg was willing to follow Turin. I mean, that's just what I keep coming back to. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. And I don't mind keeping Turgon in suspense, drawing his own conclusion, resisting that conclusion, so that when they meet again, he doesn't have to be like, hey, I thought you were dead, right? And so he can be like, my heart told me that you were alive all this time, but I didn't know, and, or whatever, sister, I feared you were dead. We can put him on whatever side of the fence we want to at that point, but there will have been very legitimate reason to fear that she was dead, and he could have had the eagles out looking, but they won't find her. They won't find her, right? Because when first they begin to look, he'll send them right back out, right? He'll send the eagles right back out. Find her, like double check, come back and tell me if you either find her or her corpse, right? But they won't find either because she's in Nand-Ungortheb, and they won't see her in Nand-Ungortheb. Right. And then if they look again later, she'll be in Nan-Elmoth, so they'll miss her again.
Right.
So that works.
And this way we have Turgon at the beginning of the episode sending Aredhel off, and Turgon at the end of the episode,
right,
with his suspension grief situation.
So we're not going to see him for a while,
right?
So
right.
dropping him halfway through the episode,
yep,
didn't feel right there either, because
right.
we're not going to see him for a while.
Right. No, I like that. And I mean, and that's fine. Like when I'm thinking ahead to like what his mindset is, that's a concern for later when she comes back, thinking about how she's received and stuff.
Right. And we don't have to have every moment of what we're talking about, like, actually happen on screen.
Right.
That's stuff that can have happened, it's just not necessary to show it.
Right.
We don't need to see him going through all 5 stages.
Right. Right. No, exactly.
Out the Eagle search party, like that.
Yep.
That's stuff that would just happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Though it strikes me that we could drop that as a tag or an eagle. Like an Easter egg or something, like basically just at some point when she's in Nan-Elmoth, right, and we kind of pan back and show eagles flying overhead, implicitly searching for her, right, that people could either make the connection or not, whatever, but that's something that could be done in a purely visual way, on screen in 5 seconds.
Right. So of course the times for her to get spotted are the times from when she leaves that Dungortheb. I don't know why I have so much trouble saying that.
Yes.
Going up to the Pass of Agalon and then going down to Nan-Elmoth.
Yes.
Which brings me to another problem that we had, and that was, why does she go to Nan-Elmoth? It's not on the way to anywhere.
Yes.
That she would be trying to go.
Yes.
Like, there's no reason to go there, right?
Yes. The only vague sense that I recall from the published text is that she goes to see the Sons of Feanor. They're not home, so she turns back in the vaguely westerly direction to go.
Right.
We're not quite sure where exactly her plan B is
Right.
after she finds the Sons of Feanor not at home. And turning back to the west, there's Nan Elmoth, and she becomes ensnared there for some reason. And again, like,
But Nan Elmoth isn't super big either, so
No.
like you could easily miss it.
It's
so
avoidable.
why does she wind up in there?
Yeah.
Which is why we decided to have her get intrigued by discussing the matter with the dwarves and think, well, you know, I might as well check this out and go off of her own accord, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So anyway, the time there, I'm not worried about the time as far as like her being spotted by eagles. I think, look, as you say, we're not going to actually dramatize this, right? We're not going to show
Right.
this on. We're not going to show Turgon and the eagles on screen at all.
Right.
Um,
It's also far enough away from where she disappeared that
Yes. She would have had to pass through Nan Dungortheb alone in order to get there. And the Eagles could very plausibly think that that's unlikely and not be searching in that direction, and instead
Right.
be searching in the direction, you know, that they were told she's supposed to be going, which is up towards the north and on the way to Fingolfin.
she travels 100 miles through New Spider Town. You know, like
Yes.
you guys may not remember Spider Town from season 3, but
Yeah.
it's a real place.
It's a real
I'm telling
place.
you.
Yeah. And the other thing, of course, is that I would, and again, here this is just like world building going on. This is not, it wouldn't be something we'd show on screen. But the other thing that I can
Right.
imagine in the like immediate aftermath, right, while she's in Nan Dungortheb, is when Turgon is sending out the eagles, and they come back and they're like, look, we've been all over the joint. We see all these
Right.
things. She's not there. And then it would be like later on he would, have them go and look again, but that would be after she was in Nan Elmoth. And again, as you say, they'd be searching also to the north. There's a lot of continent for the eagles to cover.
Right. Well, and that's an important thing to remember is that Valyrian's a big place.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a non-infinite amount of eagles to do the searching.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, no,
and
it's Stephen H. I disagree. I don't think the Eagles look stupid in doing this. They're doing the best they can. They've got a whole continent to search, and she went in the opposite direction than what they were expecting and the direction they were told to look for her, and B, she went through Nan Dungortheb, which they could plausibly suspect she wouldn't be able to do and live. So, there's all kinds of reasons for them not to find her over there.
right.
Apart from the fact that all of this and all of their instructions and their discussions with Turgons are all happening off stage anyway, so it's only by implication. This is only the kind of stuff that people would learn, in the, in the bonus material, basically.
Yeah, on the Comic-Con panel.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 But
Yeah, and
yeah.
go on.
No, I was going to say, but it's very different from the survivors situation, because the survivors are like right on the ground and have her trail to follow, and would have to stop that right away. And again, if they had reason to think she went into Nan Dungortheb, which if they were at all good at tracking, they would, then they would be the more ridiculous for turning around and going home rather than trying to help her.
Right. So, of course, at the beginning of the episode, this is part of one of the other plot lines. We had to get Fingon out of the area.
Right.
Right.
So we don't want a traffic jam here.
Right. So Fingon pencils off a letter to Dad, like in the very beginning of the episode, and then he goes off with Helgorm and Corfin to do a thing. I don't remember exactly what the thing was that he was supposed to be doing, or if we even decided on a thing, but they're off doing a thing.
They've got things to do.
Yes.
I mean, yeah,
and by the way, speaking of things to do, the Eagles also have other things to do than look for this one other elf princess.
Yeah,
like,
they're doing Turgon a favor, but like scour the continent till you find her indefinitely is not their remit,
Right. Yeah. I mean, like they also have to keep an eye on, Thangorodrim.
Yeah. 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 They have a job. They have a job, and their job isn't, just to be, his.
They are not tame eagles.
They're not tame eagles. Yeah, they're not his traffic drones.
I mean, Turgon can't pull out a moth from his collection and
Yes.
just summon them at will.
That's not how it works.
They are not for hire.
No.
Yeah, I feel like on a Tolkien show we can get away with I guess the casual fan always asks why don't the Eagles do X, but I feel like for the most part we can get away with Eagles not doing things like this because it's kind of understood that that's not what they do.
We established it in season 4,
Episode 1.
where
I was just thinking the same
Thorondor
thing.
lays the whole thing out and explains.
Yeah.
I'm not here to do your stuff for you, man.
Yep.
He's got a job, and I also, I like and going back to the discussion we had before, back in season 4 about how big Thorondor is going to be, and we still made him sufficiently imposing that nobody's just going to mistake him for a carrier pigeon, right? He's like
Right.
even Turgon approaching Thorondor to ask him a favor is coming hat in hand. Right, this is not and Turgon dispatched the Eagles to do his work for him. Right, it's not the relationship.
I mean, heck, Thorondor is dangerously close to being too large to scratch Morgoth's face.
Right, without taking off his head. Yes,
Right.
Yes.
Presumably the mightiest of all the Valar can take a fair bit of tearing before his head comes off.
Yeah.
But you would think there would be scratches from the knee up to the face,
Yes.
especially if he was as large as Tolkien described him. If he's as large as Tolkien described him, Morgoth would have to be 100 feet tall.
In
to
which
make
case
that work.
the duel with Fingolfin ends up looking like Tom
Is
and Jerry.
absurd.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not.
Yeah.
Sorry, Professor Tolkien.
Yeah. Yep. No, I agree. And that's, and in the professor's defense there, it's one of those things that there are so many things that he, a lot of these things that we're bringing in are ideas that he had at different points, which if he
Right.
were going to fully naturalize within the narrative, he would have had to fully retcon and work everything out. And that's exactly what never happened with the Silmarillion, was bringing together all of these ideas that he had and making sure that they all work together consistently. And
Right.
so
Also,
therefore, when you just throw together all the details that he ever said, they don't all work because he didn't do
Yeah.
that work.
Yeah, and we have to remember he's making myth. And
Right.
in mythic stories, not all the details have to jive. It's okay. We're telling a version of this story.
Right.
If we come at this with the assumption that these were real, that there's a real history that's involved here, and there are real people who wrote stuff down,
Right.
there are definitely different versions of this story.
Right. Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
I mean, tell me who actually burned the Library of Alexandria. I dare you.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, agreed. Okay. So Aredhel, knowing the rest of her companions are dead and that there's nothing she can do except either give up and go home or try to continue her mission alone, decides she's continuing her mission. And why does she go through Nandungortheb, the path less traveled, for very good reason, instead of heading up north to see her father? And I'm thinking the answer is do we have her escape, exiting stage right, pursued by a cat? Is that how she gets into Nandungortheb in the first place?
So the way that we were imagining it at the time of the script discussion was kind of a standoff.
Okay.
With her back to the forest, and Tevildo's kind of messing with her, and she winds up running off.
Right, but it's
forest.
pretty much to escape Tevildo and his crew that
because she's outmatched. There's too many of them.
Right, and she knows there's all this open terrain for her to travel across if she heads up to the north, and there's nowhere to go. So, okay, and she certainly, obviously, in that situation, of course, she also can't go home, because she'd lead them straight to Gondolin, right? So that's
another problem.
The one thing that she certainly can't do. Oh, sorry, I skipped a bit. Being turned back, we skipped that part. What happens with the turning back? Who turns her back?
I think
So
we just
the March Wardens of Doriath are up in the Forest of Brethel,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where that scene is taking place because we have to introduce the Forest of Brethel before Haleth's story gets there.
Hmm.
And the March Wardens are in the area because of the cat infestation problem.
Right.
And they can say, look, Thingol has said that only children of Finarfin get to go into Doriath, and that is not you, so you're not welcome. But they can also say, and watch out for the giant cats.
Right. P.S. Watch out for the cats. Yeah.
Yeah. Or if you want to go around Doriath, don't go through an Andangorthab. Like they can warn her about the danger she's about to enter into to alert the audience to the danger she's about to travel into.
Right. Right. Right.
So there was a couple of things we were trying to do with that scene, and
Okay.
mostly to set up stuff for later.
That makes
and
sense.
to remind everyone that Doriath is still closed for business to everyone who's not Finrod's immediate family.
Right. Right. And also kind of shows the consequence. I mean, the effect of Thingol being a jerk, basically, and what's gonna. And of course, also, though no one will know this at the time, serves as a lovely foreshadowing of Gondolin. Right, when Gondolin is going to shut its gates against anyone who comes to it, hate pursued, and they won't let in anybody, even no matter what their situation. So that Thingol kind of got there first, refusing entry to somebody from Gondolin who was hate pursued, or almost imminently hate pursued. Yeah, no, I like it, is what I'm saying. That works. That works. And so, but we're not having Beleg or somebody. These are extras, the March Wardens.
I think we're gonna have Beleg in the other.
He's gonna be over
front,
waiting for Haleth, right? Yeah.
In a couple episodes.
Yeah.
So I was not planning to put Beleg here.
Right.
Obviously,
Right.
we could have Beleg or Madeline be around for these scenes if we needed them, but this was just meant to be foot soldiers.
Yeah.
Really.
No, I do kind of like that. If we have everybody who comes to any border of Doriath, no matter which border it is, meet Beleg, that we get the idea of like he's the ubiquitous March Warden. Like there's no part of Doriath's boundary that I'm not constantly in. We could give that impression, which could be comical. Every time Doriath is in the distance, Beleg pops up, and yeah.
That's a thing that happens in a lot of fiction and a lot of shows, is that you always run into a main character whenever you go near someplace where a main character could be.
Right. Plus, I also like the idea. I mean, if they're faceless, then they also obviously have no authority to make any exceptions to the rule, right?
Right.
They'll see this is a crappy situation. They'll feel genuinely bad about it, but this is above their pay grade. Whereas with Beleg, like Beleg's pay grade is higher, right? And of course, that's going to be more of a conflict for him when he meets Haleth and them later on. Like by the end, he's going to be starting to want to bend the rules for Haleth.
Right.
But better to have her meet with, since there can't be any possibility of negotiation, or else she's not going to be where she needs to be. If we really need to have this door closed in her face, better to have it people who don't have the authority to make any exceptions.
Presumably, Beleg would have the authority to say, bring her back to their camp, at least in a place of safety, while he sent word to Thingol.
Yeah. Whereas the rest of them are just like, you're not on the guest list. There's nothing I can do. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That makes sense. Okay, good. I just wanted to. I realized I had skipped over that bit. So okay, that makes sense. So she goes over to the fortress, and they're not there. And so Fingon was there, and they've left together.
Had been there.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So right as you see, she just like narrowly misses her brother there, which is ironic.
Celebrimbor can be there, yeah.
Okay, Celebrimbor's there.
I don't remember what the situation was when we discussed that.
Basically, Celegorm and Curfin have to leave the fortress, and so Fingon is leaving with them in the earlier scene. I think Rhiannon had suggested that Corfin could leave Celebrimbor in charge.
Yeah.
So Aredhel could interact with Celebrimbor if we wanted him to.
Right.
Yeah.
What? Why doesn't she stay?
The dwarves are leaving when she arrives. So the way that we had that set up is that the dwarves were leaving, so she had a chance to travel with them. She has some interest in meeting all the peoples of Middle Earth, so this is a chance for her to kind of get to know them and potentially go around the south end of Doriath to look up at everybody else.
Right.
Right. Her mission is about bolstering the siege and finding the Noldor new allies. The dwarves are a potential new ally, so she's very interested in getting to know more
And she
about
has
their
no
situation.
personal experience with them at all. Sorry.
So it's a chance encounter, and she takes the opportunity, saying, "This is cool." So she immediately sees the possibility here, decides she wants to roll with this and work on it, and so she's going to travel with the dwarves to get to know them better and see what the possibility. Because you can always come back when they're back. Because I mean, they've left; they might be gone for like 5 years. You know, like you don't know. They're elves, right? So like it's like a weekend trip, right? So yeah. So she would have time to go with the dwarves. Okay, I like that. So it's not that she like is giving up on them or anything. But she could, if Celebrimbor is there. Well, I mean, even if he weren't, she could leave a message for them. What message would she leave? She would also hear that her brother was just there, right?
Right.
So that's also handy. What message would I mean? She'd leave messages for Fingon and for Celegorm, right?
I'm not dead.
Right. Don't know that if you were suspicious that I was dead, but in case rumor reaches you, yeah, no. So what would she say? What would she want to say? You're Aredhel.
She could say that she was okay.
Yeah.
So Steve was asking about this earlier, but she could say that she is planning to visit Fingolfin at some point. There, she wants to travel a bit.
She described the plan. I'm going to talk to everybody. We're going to sort
Right.
things out, and then we're going to have and then I'm going to go talk to Fingolfin.
And then, right. And this also, because a lot of people have been wondering, like, why on earth why do none of these people search for her?
Search for her, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the reason being that she told them that she was going to be traveling, and she'll get there when she gets there.
Right. Yeah. And they wouldn't have any reason to, unlike her guards, they wouldn't have any reason to think she was in distress. They know that she's traveling. Traveling by herself or with a very small guard would not be strange. That's what Aredhel always did, right? So,
it's nothing new.
Yeah. So her coming out of Gondolin is big news. Her traveling around on her own, not so much. Yeah, Rhiannon and I agree. I think she would give some ideas of the direction that she's going. Yeah. That is to say, like, I'm thinking in terms of, like, she would give him an idea about, like, what she was planning to do. She'd mention the dwarves, right? Like, I'm going to talk with the dwarves because I have this idea, right? But I'm going to come back around and we're going to talk, especially if they believe if they're like waiting for her, basically, right? And she doesn't give any sense of time frame. Again, we don't need to play out the whole conversation, but it is worth asking, why does nobody search for her when she sets off on this journey and never returns? But simply, like, if there were a conversation about this, the conversation would go something like, well, Aredhel's pretty independent, right? We all know that. Like, she had some plan and she's off pursuing some plan, and she said she'd come back, so we'll hope to see her again soon. And at what point would they start to dredge the river for her body, right? Years later, maybe? I mean, it wouldn't come up. And certainly long after she's in Nan Elmoth.
Yeah.
and because there was so much time for her to travel, they don't quite know with her, then they wouldn't even know what direction to look. They would just know she had never turned up, up in the north, and, so wouldn't know. So, okay. No, that works. That makes sense. Tell me more about her meeting with the dwarves. Are these dwarves that we've met? Are these new dwarves?
These are new dwarves.
Okay.
The dwarves that we've met in the past have all died of old age by now.
Okay, right.
Unfortunately, that is a symptom of mortals in Middle Earth.
Yeah.
But so these are brand new dwarves for us. They are trading with Doriath. They have had interactions with the Feanorians, so they can kind of bring Aredhel up to date on some news that she wouldn't be aware of.
Right.
But also with a dwarf's perspective. So they kind of view the Noldor as outsiders, obviously, and they're going to tell her things in a slightly different way than she would hear it from
Demanding
other elves.
outsiders, no less.
Right.
What kind of outsiders?
Demanding outsiders.
Yes. Well, yeah.
I mean, their
there's
main
maybe-
contact is Caranthir, so
Yeah, they're maybe
Yeah.
not super thrilled with Caranthair's whole road, but in general, they have positive relationships with the Noldor.
Right.
So this is an opportunity for us to meet new dwarves and probably start putting out the idea that there are, in fact, 2 dwarf kingdoms here in Valyria. And up until now, we've mostly been dealing with Belagast, but Nogrod is going to get thrown into the conversation because Ael has a personal friendship with the king of Nogrod.
Right.
You were suggesting, if that's okay.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
Telkar
sure.
obviously didn't like Ael very much.
Right.
And Telkar's been hanging out in Belagast, so we wanted to give him a very high up connection among the dwarves.
right.
Yeah. No,
And
that
we
makes
wanted
sense.
to make sure that the dwarves were nervous around him. Like, he's a training partner and whatnot, and he's got connections high up with the dwarves, which is one of the reasons why Aredhel wants to meet him.
Right.
But
Right. It follows. I do like that. It follows very logically on, going from the conversation with the dwarves and the way that leads her both physically and, by way of diplomatic segue to Ael.
mhm. And the dwarves very clearly do not enter Nan Elmoth. That's a one-way ticket to Gonsville.
Right. Okay. So they have met Ael. They respect Ael. They would probably fear him to some extent, or at least be
the rank and file guys, presumably.
Yeah.
More like the relationship between the Rohirrim and Galadriel's kingdom of Lothlorien.
Right.
Healthy respect, a good deal of fear. We just stay out so that everyone is safe.
And Aredhel, would probably dismiss their concerns as kind of those ignorant of the ways of elves, right? When they start talking about yes, like it is like a forest of sorcery, like an elvish sorcery, that she would be like, oh, okay, yeah, all right.
That's adorable.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, exactly. Okay, right. Elvish sorcery. Well, I think I can handle that, right? I'll just go one elf sorcerer to another, and we'll talk it out. Yeah. And especially if there's evidence, as there likely would be, that the dwarves are themselves. I mean, there's gonna be some prejudice and misgivings in general. I mean, it's not like they're going to be total. I mean, they're going to be obviously uneasy with the elves, right? And so anything that they say against Ael is going to have an asterisk in her head, right? Because she's going to be like, oh, well, but look, like they don't trust me either. So right? They're probably just paranoid, or ignorant, or xenophobic, or all 3, right?
Or no.
Yeah. So, So anyway, I think that makes sense. That works. Okay. So this along with Everybody Dies is then the other thing which felt to me like the biggest departure from the story, right?
Mhm.
And you guys completely convinced me on the everybody dies point. So that was Florian's thing. He was the everybody dies champion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that was definitely his idea.
That was really smart. Okay.
It's
Now-
nice to have somebody else thinking about like the scene economy and
Right.
where things have to end up by the end of the episode.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, it was a very good thought. Her setting out in order to meet Aol and Nan Elmoth strikes me as probably the biggest departure from the story. And of course, I get it. I get the damsel in distress thing. Totally get the damsel in distress thing. You know, we don't want an early scenes Disney princess staggering through the forest, with a montage of like scary owls and like branches of lightning in the sky and stuff like that, right? I get that. But if she's going in on purpose to meet him, we're turning away from a pretty big mythic moment, right? I mean, she is entering into creepy magical forest and finds the tall dark stranger who brings her into his web. I'm not saying there aren't reasons to do it. There totally are reasons to turn away from that, but that's especially the way in which it's the anti-Baron and Luthien, right? The parallel or the anti-parallels there.
Yeah, we did not actually take out the part where he's doing magic and ensnaring her and she gets turned around once she enters in. The only part we changed is that she goes in on purpose knowing that he's there.
Right.
Because otherwise, the big question for me was why? Like, oh, there's a creepy forest. Well, let's check it out.
Right.
Doesn't seem very mission oriented, if you ask me. So giving her a reason to go in there, and that seemed to me to be the only reason that she could go in there.
Yeah.
Is
I can see that. I mean, especially since, as you say, it's not exactly, the crossroads of Beleriand right there. I mean, she doesn't have to go into the creepy forest.
And she just got out of a creepy forest.
Yeah. Yeah. She's arguably at her fill of creepy forests. And yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, we still lose the Baron and Luthien parallel, which might be a price that we have to pay. I just don't want to pay it without caution, right? And let me say, I do like the logic of, the way that her mind is going from one idea to the other, right? From pursuing the mission, first she was just going to do a briefing, right? I'm going to do a briefing with folks. I got sidetracked, had a little issue, cats, Nandun Gortheb, but I'm back on track, right? Okay, we are having passed through Nandun Gortheb, which was not the plan, but now I've done it, right? So I'm gonna here are the Sons of Fëanor. So I'm gonna go see my bud Celegorm, and I'm gonna continue the plan. But then of course she gets double sidetracked, right? But not sidetracked. It's an upgrade. Right. She then sees the dwarves and she's like, opportunity, right? Okay, no, this is a better plan than the original plan of just like getting briefings, right? Instead, I've got an opportunity, and she will talk to and again, this is actually why I really like having Celebrimbor there, so that there's a named character she can have a conversation with to learn about the dwarves. And what she would learn is, y'all have known about these potential allies for all this time, and you've done so. Like, okay, you trade with them? That's it? Come on, like, don't you see the opportunity? Well, surely you guys can see the big picture here, right? So she has the big idea, and she's going to pursue it. So now she's left plan A and she's on plan B. And from them, the dwarves, she learns about Aol. And this would be to her like, oh man, this is the sweet spot, right? This is the key. if there is already this elf lord who, and also, by the way, why has nobody allied themselves with him? Right? I mean, here's this, like, all, you know, oh man, like all of this. So the first thing second thing. First thing she discovered was an army of cats. But the second thing she discovers after leaving Gondolin is all of these, the continent is lousy with potential allies that nobody else is taking advantage of, right? Her cousins have completely dropped the ball on this. And so dwarves, Aredhel, other elf kindred entirely, we can bring him in and he can deliver the dwarves, right? He can introduce us to the dwarves and this is perfect, right? Oh my goodness. So I love that rationale. Like, it strikes me with the character of Aredhel as we've developed it. I can absolutely see her going down this path and deciding that entering Nen Elmoth to find him is a great idea. So I'm not saying that I dislike it in that way. I'm just saying, I'm just counting the cost. Right, and the cost, what we lose is the Baron and Luthien parallel.
Yeah.
The serendipity of the meeting.
Mm-hmm. So yes, there is that. One thing that, and obviously also the parallel to Thingol and Melian, who met similarly.
Right.
One thing that's important to note, though, is that she is going to have an experience with fairy, right?
Right.
Whether and this happens also. This is a mythic thing that happens where somebody goes seeking out the white stag or the the fairy princess who can grant a wish, or this happens as well.
Right.
So it's not. It's different. It's different, but it's not mythic either. Right. As long as we make sure to maintain the fairy and drama that's happening here as she's entering.
And
it's a different version of that story. There are different elements, but it is essentially a similar story in a lot of ways.
It's still the same story to him.
Yes. Yeah. Because to Aredhel, it is serendipity.
Yeah.
He's the one creating the fairy and drama.
Yeah.
But she's news to him.
What if...
The biggest problem with their meeting was to make sure that we didn't lose all the tension. Right? And so we talked about a few different things. We talked about the potential of having Aredhel get into danger and having Aredhel, who has created the danger, of course, step in to save her and whatnot. But every time that we did that, Aredhel felt like she didn't know what she was doing. Like, she falls down a hole, she gets trapped by what could happen there that doesn't make her feel foolish, right? So one of the things we had to do was make her meeting with him scary, and the best way that we could find to do that was his silent servants, his creepy silent servants, right? Because it almost feels like he's also controlling them, like they're automatons, and we don't know that that's not true, right? Because our description is only coming to us through what Aredhel, I guess Maiglin, told the people of Gondolin later. So we don't know that he's not controlling them. Right.
And I like, as Rhiannon says, it would demonstrate that his power is greater than hers, which is good. I like that. I mean, that is to say, what I like about that is that it gives her... She would respect that, right? So, okay, because here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, what's Aredhel thinking? So she hears from the dwarves, oh yeah, creepy forest of sorcery. We don't go there or else we'll die. And she's like, oh, okay. She's probably thinking
I just came through the creepiest forest ever.
Right, exactly. And also, like, sounds like Doriath, right? So, I mean, it's like, and I get it. Like, you know, random person comes up to Doriath, they're going to have a bad experience, you know, and of course the March Wardens turned me away, but whatever. Anyway, like, elves don't just do that. They don't just suffer from the, you know, so whatever. So apparently the dwarves are repelled by whatever this is, but whoever lives there, the dude who lives there, you know, it's just a defense mechanism, not unlike the girdle, right?
Presumably, Aredhel has been to Lorien, which is like the magical forest,
Right.
Right. Which, if one of us walked in there, like, it would be super creepy because we don't understand what's happening.
Right. So she comes in and she experiences scary phenomena, right? There's darkness, there's the sense of fear, there's the being turned around, there's the, which again, I think would not be very unlike what, you know, a random person, like a random human or a random orc trying to get into Doriath would experience, right? So that's how she'd contextualize it, right? She wouldn't be like, wow, the person who lives here is really sketchy. She'd be like, okay, defenses, and she might even be like, okay, pretty impressive defenses, actually. Like, this is I'm on the threshold of a serious player here, right? Like, this guy is capable. Look at the defenses that he's put around his realm. And so even in a sense, even if she fails to get in, even if she's ensnared or something, right? I mean, like, I can imagine her, like, you know, she's like, you know, engulfed and wrapped up by brambles or something like that, right? You know, I don't know what, like something like this. She's actually deterred from getting in. That would be like a good impression.
She can't be too cool, though.
What?
But having...
Oh, sorry.
She can't be too cool.
Yeah, no. I agree. She has to actually be afraid, right? No, I see. Yeah, Marie, go ahead.
Let's see. At the end, the way we're going to resolve this is that when she does meet him, her greeting is going to reveal at least a little bit of how impressive she thinks he is.
Right.
Because of all of what she has heard about him.
Right.
And the idea was to have it be pretty heavy on the flattery, because most guys, upon meeting a beautiful elf princess who's flattering them terribly, would, you know, maybe be somewhat sympathetic to what she's saying.
Right.
I mean,
right.
At a guess.
I can see that.
I wouldn't kick her out.
Right? So if she, at that point, after she has experienced all of that, is like, and wow, the defenses you have on this place are amazing.
Right.
Like, would fit. So she could compliment it afterwards.
Right.
Even if it was quite disturbing to get through in the first place.
Even, I mean, so I like that. I mean, so I agree, Nick, as you were saying, she gets wrapped up in it. She is in fact terrified. Whether it's illusions, whether it's disorientation, whether it's darkness, whether, you know, staggering in the darkness, whatever way we choose to manifest this, it would be a terrifying experience. But then when she comes out of it, right? And this is where we could do. Sorry, what I'm doing is I'm clinging. I'm trying to find a way to do the Baron and Luthien parallel anyway, basically. Because, of course, the element, it seems to me, the essential element to maintain the Baron and Luthien parallel, and it's reversed. She's Baron, he's Luthien. Right? Baron has come through. He's just passed through Nandungortheb, right? And the mountains. So he just came through Nandungortheb the wrong way, right? And on the wrong axis. And he gets through the edges of Doriath. So he's actually just had a quite similar experience, right? Coming through the girdle of Melian himself. And it doesn't mean, like, yes, fate brought him through, enables him to go through, but that doesn't mean he had a pleasant time as he was going through the girdle of Melian, just that he managed it, in fact, right? He succeeded in passing through, but it was probably difficult and almost certainly unpleasant. And there he is, weary, PTSD, right? He's in a bad place. And what happens? He sees Luthien dancing in the distance, and it's like, oh, right, so that moment of, rest and beauty and eucatastrophe when he's just been on the brink of death and has been suffering for so long, that's one of the essential mythic elements, I would say, of the meeting between Beren and Luthien. And we can do something similar to that, right?
So Rhiannon brings up an interesting point here. And I think this would actually work great if his silent servants also seem kind of trance-like. Like not zombies, right? But not zombies.
No, not zombies.
Not zombies, but
what are his silent servants? Well, no, let's come back to that. Let's come back to that.
So Rhiannon says that she could stand still and seem enchanted when she first lays eyes upon Aredhel. So, like, she walks in and he could be doing something, like, totally innocuous. Like, he's just going about his day, right?
Yeah.
But he's completely aware that she's been in the forest this whole time.
Right.
Right? And he's been drawing her in through his ensorcelment.
Right. And
she sees him, and she's transfixed in the same way that that Thingol was when he comes upon Melian. Yeah. And he asks her a question, and she kind of like snaps out of it and answers the question, and as they start to have a dialogue, the more of a dialogue they're having, the less she's having to like shake off the enchantment.
Yes.
And it's becoming like actual real appreciation.
Right.
And that's an important thing. Like the flattery that she's giving, it can't be disingenuous. It has to be genuine.
Yeah.
So it has to it has to seem real. Otherwise it's going to come off super corny and we're not going to believe her.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I like that. She came here with the explicit intention to butter up a potential political ally, right? That was her goal when she came. And instead, what she finds herself doing is expressing genuine respect and interest, right? Because
and we wanted,
yeah. No, go ahead.
We wanted the name of Finwë to come up also because he knew Finwë.
He knew Finwë, right? Yeah.
At Cuivianen. And when that comes up in conversation, she's like, "Oh,
yeah, big deal.
Oh,
he's a big deal. This guy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heavy hitter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That moment, the Beren and Luthien discovery, the gender reversed Beren and Luthien discovery moment. It's reversed. I think we can do it. Right. So yeah, she comes in. I like the transfixed thing. Right. He's gonna let her go. Right. Like he cuts it. He doesn't come and rescue her from like where she's snared or whatever, but like she suddenly breaks through, like it suddenly ends. Whatever experience it is that she's having exactly suddenly ends. And after it ends, she sees him. And I think he would like contrive this essentially.
Yes.
This is how he would mean it to go. And so again, it's lovely because it's a direct parallel to Beren and Luthien. That whole, like, after this time of suffering and my incredibly traumatic journey, I now behold you in this moment of peace and in this oasis of calm, right?
And it looks like she broke through.
Yes.
It looks like she broke through.
Right. That she's won through. Yes, exactly.
Right. They don't know that he
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the whole lovely thing, right? Whereas like Luthien is genuinely not knowing anything about Beren's appearance, right? He contrived the whole thing, right? He's going for this effect with her. And so again, it's a direct parallel, but it's undermined. It's actually a kind of an anti-parallel, which is the whole point of the parallel in the first place, right? To show that they are the anti-Beren and Luthien and not just the same story. Yes, though of course happening first, and so we have to remember that. But because it's the later story, it's the Beren and Luthien story that we're setting up, so we have to do that carefully here, a careful anticipation.
It's almost like one of those scenes, and I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I know that this sort of scene exists where like the main character, the protagonist, is having kind of this trippy experience, right? And like this kind of fear-laden experience. I feel like something in the Matrix has this. One of the Matrix films has something like this, and then they're suddenly in a space where somebody starts talking to them, like, and that person then delivers like a story-ending exposition dump.
Yeah,
is how that.
Yeah, I think you're thinking of the Matrix scene where Morpheus shows up in the space with the white background and the armchairs.
Well, I
something
think
like that.
I think there. It may actually be a scene from a later film, like when he meets the programmer or something like that.
The architect.
The architect.
Yeah, the architect.
Yeah.
I don't remember liking that scene very much, but I think that didn't have to do with the structure of the scene. It was just I feel like I'd already had it with the film by then.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that moment, her coming out of it, whatever she was coming out of, kind of recovering, and then discovering him, right? So that it does look like she has made it through her own strength, right? And then finds him there in the middle. And he won't be like standing and facing her, right? She will see him like from the side, basically, right? As if it were incidental. Again, recalling Luthien, although he's not going to be dancing, right? What's he going to be doing?
He should be doing something that's natural to him. Like
Right.
he should be doing something that he does. So like he could be working a bloomery or something like that
Right.
to, in the smelting of metal. Like
Yeah.
like just shoveling coal. Like could you imagine this
Shoveling
enormously
coal.
power
Yeah.
individual
That's a good look.
like shoveling coal into his smelter and then turning around to start talking to her?
Right.
We had suggested that he was doing something to control the magic of the forest and that the audience would see that. So I'm not saying he has a magic mirror to look into, but he has something.
I was kind of having vague magic mirror thoughts as well. I don't know exactly what
So
that would
whatever
look like.
he has that he's been using to control the magic, he's probably been putting his focus and attention on that. And if
Yes.
he turns away from that to see her, the audience would know what he was doing, but she wouldn't. This is just one of his devices in his workshop.
Right.
This is Melian's Grove.
Yes.
Right? This is the very grove
Yes.
where Melian met Thingol.
Yes.
And so it should, to a very canny viewer, remind us of Melian's grotto in Menegroth that we've spent a little bit of time in. Right? It doesn't have to look exactly like it, but there should be enough there that if somebody watches it after the fact, right, they go back and rewatch, they go, oh, that's amazing, because that looks a lot like this other place, and that's how, like, that's like the control center, right? I'm using a very technological term there, but it's the control center.
Right. Right.
So like the waterfall, like we had like a waterfall thing in her grotto where she ensorcels Galadriel.
Using water, I mean,
Yeah.
if he's standing next to a pool looking down into the pool, that doesn't look creepy, I mean, like
No.
it's and yeah, it's true that if the viewers got a flash of him looking down into the pool and seeing her suffering in the pool, right, with some kind of subtle implication that he was causing it, then that's all the better, right? Because then she doesn't realize, then there's some dramatic irony, right, where the viewer realizes that this is a sketchier situation than it looks like, but she wouldn't have reason to do that. Yeah. Okay.
I wonder if we could put if we could do that like in flashbacks later on when she's realizing the situation that she's in.
It's possible
Rather
that
than
we can
giving that
have
up right now.
we could have Ale do his magic pool
Thing on somebody else.
gazing thing, at a later time, and at that point the viewer would be like, hey, isn't what he did to Aredhel when she showed up? So
Yeah.
it's
I like that.
possible that the audience's first glimpse of Ale can be Aredhel's first glimpse of Ale if we want
Yes.
it to be. Like,
I kind of like that. I kind of prefer that.
moment.
Yeah. I
Okay.
kind of prefer that.
Yeah, because it was a question of how to do the build-up. So.
Yeah. No, that's true, because we don't want to reveal it to them right away. We want to string the viewers along into thinking that he's just a dark, handsome elf stranger living in the woods whom everyone else has overlooked and marginalized, right? And she's finally going to give him a chance.
We wanted to make sure there was a lot of like negative stuff said about him,
Right.
so that the viewers would be like, "Oh, Aredhel's being warned against this guy,"
Yep.
but really, he's a prince in disguise who's totally going to be like. We
Yep.
wanted the viewer to kind of disregard some of the negative stuff to give him a chance.
Yep.
Rather than try to convince them that he's really okay,
Right.
because that's more suspicious looking.
Right.
In episode 4, there's going to be stuff that the viewer's going to be like, the red flags are going to start popping up, right?
Right.
And then in episode, the next episode where we have them, I don't remember off the top of my head, it's not important, but that's when we drop the bomb that no, this guy is not okay.
Right.
No.
Yeah. This was a manipulation and power play by him from the beginning. Right. Okay, I like that. Yeah. And if he's standing there doing something, I could get behind the idea of him forging, especially if him forging or like chanting over a weapon or something, it's some, I don't know, something that's him, like, but it has to be something impressive, right? Not impressive in the same way that Luthien dancing is impressive, but it should be spellbinding in some way. Like, she should be looking at this and being like, wow, doesn't he look A, impressive, and B, dreamy, right?
Right. So the transfixion isn't, I don't know if you can use transfix that way, but it doesn't necessarily like it's something he's personally doing. It could be.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be that. Like if he's got like if he has, I can't imagine he'd be doing any further work on his sword at this point.
Right. No, but he could be making something else. I mean,
and like passing his, like if he's passing his hand on over the runes as he's kind of like mutter singing, like he doesn't have to be like actually singing.
Right.
Right. Although I believe, if my memory serves, I think that Mark Strong can sing. But
yeah, no, I mean, she came here looking for an ally, right? So she sees him making an obviously, potent weapon or piece of armor or something like that.
And we see like the runes that are carved into it glowing under his fingers as he's as he's enchanting it.
Yeah. That's a good look. I mean, that's, if you're trying to grab the romantic attention of the Aredhel character we've been developing, that's not a bad way to go about it. It's a good look. It's a good look.
Yeah. And it's something like, it's magical, but it's not suspicious.
Right. No, not suspicious. Not suspicious. It's powerful. It's got, again, good ally, right? Excellent ally material right here. Clearly. Yes. And hot would be the other thing, right? I mean, there does have to be that element in it. I mean, some kind of crush.
I hear Hunched is in this year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, he is a tall elf lord.
He would be taller if he wasn't hunched over.
She went there looking for an ally.
Right.
She didn't necessarily know what to expect. So if she is pleasantly surprised by whom she finds, then it works.
Yeah. And he would be consciously... He is flattered by her, as you guys were suggesting, but he also would be flattering her deliberately as well. I mean, he is deliberately turning on the charm. From his angle, right?
No one else has come this far into my forest,
Yeah, he would compliment her strength. I mean, we talked about him as a sort of narcissistic, abusive personality, right? And people with narcissistic, abusive personalities can be extremely charming, right? Especially at the outset of a relationship. And so we show that, right? He is charming to her because he's trying to, it's part of the ensnaring process, right? Deliberately.
I met a few years ago, I met a friend of my wife's fiance. I met him, and I've been in sales for a long time. So I can usually recognize when somebody is being too complimentary.
Right.
You know, and that was the immediate impression that I got.
Right.
Like, okay, what are you selling, sir? Because you don't need to sell anything to me.
Right.
And then, of course, things fell apart very, very quickly. So it would surprising me not even a little bit. But like these guys. Like once you've met a few of them, you know these people, and when.
But it's the
Well,
kind of
we'd like him to be good at it, though.
he's good at it, and
Right.
she wouldn't suspect it. She wouldn't.
Yeah.
She would not be
A
thinking in these
person-
They
directions.
never do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a person like this finds out what the other person is looking for and
Right.
becomes that.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
And she's not going to hide what she was looking for because she doesn't have a reason to. So she's giving him some ammunition to present himself a particular way.
Yes. And this is what we gain from having her consciously go into Nun Elmoth to find him, is that's clearer. She's not just maiden in distress who's wandered into the dark forest. As far as yeah.
And anytime that you buy a car, if your salesman is any good at what they do, they're going to sit you down. They're going to ask you about you,
Right.
and they're going to get you to talk about what you do in your car and
Right.
what kinds of things you like about your car and
Yes.
what any trips that you're planning in the future. And the whole purpose of that entire interview is to load them up with everything they need to paint the picture
Right.
of you driving in this car.
Right.
that they're gonna
Right.
sell you.
Yeah.
You know,
So him selling her on himself will be able to happen efficiently on screen because of this.
which
yeah.
he accomplishes by getting her to sell herself to him.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
job interviews are so effective.
Right.
They use the concept of fear of loss to get you to sell yourself to them when they're the ones who need somebody there.
Right. Right. Let's talk about the silent servants then. What do we
Okay.
want to do with the silent servants? First of all, what
They're
are they?
like they're like our first hint on screen that something's not quite right.
Well, they're certainly different, right? And they've got to be different in an unsettling kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they're permanently transfixed. Like they've been living in this forest for so long at this point that they are permanently transfixed by him. That's
What are
why
they?
they don't talk.
Are they elves? Are they spirits?
I think,
Oh, I was definitely picturing them as elves.
yeah.
I wasn't
I-
picturing them as like his claymation created.
Or
by silent
something,
servants.
yeah.
Toyed with the idea of them being dwarves, but
The idea of them being dwarves.
I briefly toyed with it, but I don't think that's
Yeah. It's harder.
yeah.
Weirder.
And dwarves
Sorry.
are particularly resistant to domination anyway.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. Having them be under his sway like that really wouldn't work. Okay. So he's got a bunch of elves, but the relationship between him and his elf servants is just like pretty quickly apparent. Not in this episode, but fairly quickly will become apparent that it's of a different and unhealthy kind.
Mm-hmm.
So all we need in this episode is one or more silent footmen, like basically elves just sort of standing there like a footman would stand in a 19th century household, saying nothing, doing nothing until needed. That would be weird. We have not shown elvish servants acting like that. But it also wouldn't be so weird. I mean, because there's context for that, right? I mean, it's not unknown to the viewers that you would have servants standing,
Well, I'll tell you, if they're not part of the story in this scene, which in the way that we've constructed the scene, they aren't, I would say they actually might be a little distracting.
Yeah, I certainly do agree with Rhiannon. They
brings that
shouldn't be there during the first meeting.
Right. So anything that we see of them, the first time we see them really is going to be in episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
And there can be some kind of mildly creepy things like they're serving them food and whatnot, and Aredhel thanks one of them, and they just kind of like don't really respond to that.
Right.
And she thinks that's a little weird.
Right.
And like again, there's a lot of Beauty and the Beast in this, so it's like we're telling the audience this guy's got some rough edges, but
right,
but like she's gonna win him over is what we're telling the audience, that she's gonna win him over to do great things.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, that's not gonna happen.
Right. No, it has a very Beauty and the Beast feel, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's good. I mean, that's exactly
we want to be capturing fairy tales.
Yeah, it should have a fairy tale feel.
Every Grimm's fairy tale on the way down.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. And I mean, it's not even like it. I mean, this is like a Beauty and the Beast, but it's like a Beauty and the Beast gone bad.
Yeah.
Fairy tale story. I mean, I think that's legit.
It's Beauty and the Beast without the actual eucatastrophe or true love element to the story. It's what really happens when a guy who looks like a monster locks you in his castle.
Right. Spoiler, normally that doesn't end well. Yeah.
All the things that people complain about in the Beauty and the Beast story, we're gonna fix that.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
We see you, 20 to 30 something women. We see you.
It turns out he does not have a heart of gold, actually. Yes. Sometimes. Yep. Agreed. Okay. No, I like it. That's good. Lots of salutary life lessons. Okay. I'm making my do I have time to go on to another slide face, and I think the answer is no. I don't have time to go on to another
so
slide.
sad right now.
I think that's good. So there's obviously the B plot that we need to talk about. And the C plot is just Fingon, right? Isn't it Fingon? C plot?
C plot is Fingolfin. But it's the C plot and the B plots are kind of intertwined.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Yeah. So what we have left to talk about is everything that's happening in Nargothrond, which includes Fingolfin visiting them, and Beor and Aredhel.
With the ironic effect of showing the audience that Fingolfin wasn't at home anyway, so Aredhel turns out to have been completely right not to head straight up there. She'd have been wasting her time anyway.
Mm-hmm.
No one is at home is the theme of this episode.
Right. Yeah.
So
nobody's at home except Aol. That's the problem. Yeah.
Is the B plot and the C plot.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
And the C plot is the men-centric side. The B plot is the elf-centric side.
Right. Okay. That's cool.
Pending existence.
That's cool. All right. Well, we will come back to the B and C plot and touch on the frame, which is very brief in this episode, but that's all good. Okay. So preparation for next time then. In our next session, we will talk about the B&C bots. But we're also going to be planning to do music. So our next in between episode session discussion will be about music. We're going to be talking with Philip Menzies, our composer, who's been working with Film from season 1. And we're going to be talking through some preliminary ideas and stuff in anticipation of hopefully some more musical performances at the end of the season. So here are my questions for next time as we're thinking about the music stuff. What themes from season 5 do we want to capture in musical themes? What are like new things that we really want to that we want to talk about with Phil so that he can think about trying to capture those? Like we've had many of the sort of central ideas of earlier seasons get kind of embodied within particular recurring musical themes. What things do we want to do, and what might those be like? So that's one issue that we'll want to talk about with Phil. Which musical themes from previous seasons will we want to incorporate or modify in season 5? That's been another thing. We've had continuity with the music, right? But often it's been kind of shifting and adapting to what's going on in that season. So what kind of connections, what kind of developments would we see in some of the themes that we've been looking at before? And then we're going to need men themes, right? And themes for the different houses of men, presumably. We've done that before. And of course I'm remembering the themes that he made an elf theme, and then he made the 3 different variations on that theme for the different houses of the elves. This was back in season 2 when he introduced this. Are we going to go for a similar thing with humans? Is it going to be parallel? Will the differences between the different kind of themes for the families be different in some way? How should we go about doing this? I think that would be another interesting conversation to have. So definitely invite folks to be thinking about those things, to be putting particular suggestions or particular just sort of either suggestions for answers to these questions, or sort of further questions, or uncertainties, or contemplations that we can then bring up and talk with Phil about when we meet with him. So our next session will be 3 weeks from tonight, because 2 weeks from tonight is New Year's Eve, I think. So we're not going to do that. I figure between 10 p.m. and 12 a.m. Eastern time, some folks might have other plans on New Year's Eve, but who knows? Anyway, but we're not going to be here. So we're going to meet on the 7th. Then we're going to meet again on the 14th to get back to our original schedule. So we'll actually have 3 sessions in January, but it'll be 3 weeks until our next one, and it'll be 2021 by the time we meet again. So that is the plan. Well, thanks everybody for joining me. Thank you, Nick and Marie and Dave, for being here tonight. This was a fun discussion. And look forward to finishing that off for next time. So I will say, as always, thanks for listening, and Godspeed.
Thank you so much for having us on tonight.
Very good. No problem. Thanks for...
Never ceases to amaze me the amount of hay we can make out of... I think when people think of Silmarillion, they don't think of like Aredhel as like one of the like really key storylines.
It's true.
There's so much good stuff.
So much good stuff. So much potential. So many wonderful things to kind of bring out, and a lot of really important issues. So that's good.
I might suggest instead of like picking up this stuff that we left off in the next session, actually doing it in the following session, because you can just go right into the death of Beor from there.
Okay. Okay. So we do just music next time.
This way you can do, way you can kind of focus on the music.
Yeah.
We'll give Phil the whole session if you want to.
Sure.
And
That makes sense.
Yeah, we can save the plot stuff for the next week, because I think it'll be the 14th will be the next week.
Right. Yeah, it will just be the next week. So, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Good plan. Good plan. All right. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. See you guys in 3 weeks.
Take care.
Y'all in 2021.
2021. That's it.
Can't wait.
A brand new year.
I feel like people were saying that last year, though. So
Well, they were wrong, and we can be right.
That's it.
That's right.
That's it.
It's a brand new year, but the same old global pandemic.
Hey, things are changing. Things are changing. Yeah. Oh, hey, I see Phil saying, I hope I can come up with enough for a whole session. First of all, don't worry about it, because we have all this stuff to talk about if we want to start talking about it next time. So no worries. But also, Phil, remember, don't worry.
To have a problem.
It's not like you have to, compose all this stuff for next time. We're just going to be talking about stuff. So there'll be plenty of stuff to talk about.
Yep. We don't seem to have any trouble
Yeah.
filling up the time.
talking for hours about the tiniest details ever.
Exactly. And I have to say, I got to admit, when I first read the outline, I was a little dubious. I was like, gosh, this is wow. Okay. I mean, the changes with the Aredhel plot, I was not sure. I was not blown away on a first read, but I'm convinced.
Yeah.
I'm convinced.
Yeah. Well, I took some convincing as well. So
Yeah.
I'm still bummed we didn't get to spend more time on the silent servants.
We'll get there.
we'll get them. We'll get them.
Right, good.
The role of the silent
problem.
servants in future episodes, we'll have more opportunity to include them.
Dave, if you like talking endlessly about tiny little details, you should stop in for one of the actual script discussions.
Script discussions.
Right.
It is.
Yeah, I
it
might
is
do that.
nearly painful. Nearly.
Painstaking.
But it's nearly painful.
Sounds like it.
But yeah,
Excellent.
you're welcome anytime.
All right.
Excellent. Yeah, that'd be cool. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you guys
Take
next
care.
year. Although the theoretical budget of our hypothetical blockbuster may be unlimited, the production budgets of this and the rest of our fun alternative educational projects are unfortunately not. If you have enjoyed joining our production team, please consider donating at signumuniversity.org/fund.